Well, we had a pretty nasty weekend of storms in many parts of the plains in the Midwest here this past weekend, and plenty of heavy rain as well. And looking like maybe some more potential of storms and heavy rain here this week ahead as we get ready to flip the calendar over to the month of May. Let's talk weather. Joining us now, Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrien Ag Solutions. Eric, good to catch up with you again, my friend. And I'm sure you were busy over the weekend, as many folks in the weather community were. Very, very tough to watch some of those videos and pictures of just devastating tornadoes in parts of the plains. And I know our thoughts are with folks affected. Give us a bit of a recap of what we saw this past weekend.
Yeah, through early Monday morning, the last 5 days or so has produced 168 reports of tornadoes. Now they'll filter that down. Some of those are duplicates, but just for perspective, that's like there's 168 hours in a week, so that's like one an hour. If you want to think of it that way, it's extremely active time frame, and certainly the last few days here, we've seen some incredible damage. And I have to say this, outside of the hardwood winter wheat belt, most of the areas that got hit hardest with the severe weather had yet to get a full crop established. So if there's a silver lining to it, is that we didn't hit this when corn was, 3 feet tall, and just ripped across the country. But that doesn't take away from the flooding that happened. So we have some places of the plains in the Midwest that picked up 6 to 10 inches of rain in addition to all of this. And it's going to go down as one of our busiest weeks in terms of severe weather in U.S. history. And the damage pictures, I mean, we had major metropolitan areas that got hit. So that certainly
Mhm.
makes national news. And of course, you saw what happened through parts of Omaha and surrounding communities. And so this was a really rough week. And the weekend, really hit some folks hard. But I'll say this, um, the soil moisture maps after all that rain make it look like we didn't even have a drought last fall. But it's spring rains coming in, and what it's doing is just delaying things in a big way. And we have a lot of rivers that kind of surround parts of the end of the Mississippi, excuse me, the end of the Missouri River Basin as it gets toward the Mississippi are in flood stage right now, as are places down south in Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. So yeah, very active weekend. Not a whole lot of sleep to be had by us meteorologists, but that's kind of what we signed up for. So we're paying close
Yeah.
attention to this kind of pattern.
Very true. Very true. Well, as we watch into this week ahead, it seems like we got more potential here for some of this rain and more as we kind of flip this calendar over to the month of May. It seems like planting windows here this week might be tough to come by in some parts of the country. Eric, am I right?
Yeah, and earlier the Eastern Corn Belt was shut down because of too much rain, while the West didn't have enough, but it was too early. We're still having frost events, soil temperatures weren't where we exactly wanted them. And then now it got so wet in the western side of the Corn Belt, the East is getting a smaller break, parts of it along the Ohio River. I mean, northern Indiana, not the case. They're extremely wet there, just like Illinois is. But the pattern is just going to make one small change. Instead of like racing into the west, running from north to south, from like Washington to California, then coming over the mountains and ejecting, we're going to have them now entering the northwest and going straight toward the northern plains. And that's probably going to be the pattern we have around till I'd say May 7th, 8th, 9th. So we're not going to slow down the progression of systems. They're going to look different, but they're not going to slow down the progression of these systems, which will ultimately result in tighter windows as we go forward. But it does appear that once we get past May 7th, 8th, 9th, we get a little bit of a break. It's going to take a while for things to dry down, but we could be starting to look at some parts of the Corn Belt showing up with some delays in planting. What's interesting was, Jesse, I mean, if you'd have asked me weeks ago, I thought, hey, we'll see some normal planting progress. We'll get going. But this near-term pattern's kind of hitting us hard right here at the very beginning for getting some of those big acres in the central United States going. So yes, I think once you get past May 7th, 8th, 9th, we start to see normal spring windows for planting open up. But until then, I think things are going to be pretty tight.
Well, it's something we'll obviously watch the forecast, and I know for plenty of folks, you get that calendar later into May, they start to maybe worry a little bit if they got a lot of crop to put in the ground in some areas, and I'll be curious to watch the planting progress report here too, and see some of those areas that have gotten planted and all the rain, how much that's going to help with some of this early establishment and getting some early emergence here with some good soil moisture to work off of for a while, Eric.
Yeah, we got to get the heat on this crop too to get it to pop out of the ground. And
Yeah.
if you're in the north or in the western, plains, it's going to be hard to come by. We've got a lot of cold air in the north setting up in the near term, coming out of the Canadian prairie. I mean, this morning, Jesse, it was snowing in North Dakota. We had snow over the weekend that came off the Front Range, hit Nebraska. So there's some folks out there that are not getting the early heat that we need. We got it all back in January and February. Now here we are at this point, and we certainly did it. The other thing I worry about with all this rain is, growers talk to me a lot about how you get so muddy after you plant, and if you do get a dry stretch, it like puts a crust on top of that, which makes emergence difficult. So hydrologically, we needed the water, but in terms of our operations, it was a lot in some places that don't need this much rain for this time of year.
Well, let's shift our focus to South America here a little bit, Eric. What are some things you're watching down there? We've kind of touched on this. It seems like the Safrina areas in Brazil are going dry and getting hot. Argentina's watching a few systems that looks like kind of waffle around. What's the latest you're seeing down in South America right now?
Yeah, we normally expect the monsoon to slow down at the end of April and beginning of May. So if you just think about it like in Mato Grosso, right, they grow about 45% of the Safrina corn. May precipitation, roughly speaking, is about a third of what April is. So there is a normal slowdown to the dry season, but it's just a bit earlier by about two weeks or so, maybe a bit more than that. And I was looking this morning at a rainfall map from the last couple of weeks, and satellite derived in parts of southeastern Brazil, getting into like Mato Grosso do Sul, have missed out on some good rains as of late. So now we're going to put dry conditions in that area with temperatures 5 to 8 degrees Celsius above average. This is just a rapid dry down in that area for this crop that's either right at pollination or going into early grain fill. So you can back me up on this if I'm right or wrong, but I still feel as though the markets are saying, well, prove it. Is there really a problem?
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, how much of the crop is vulnerable to the normal dry down we get this time of year? But I have to just tell you to layer on another thing. Southern Brazil, like Rio Grande do Sul, getting into Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, nonstop rain. I mean, huge storms over the weekend. I saw some massive hail that fell down there. Plus, we had a whole lot of just flooding rains. So we put all that together and just say that if you're trying to get through grain fill and past it, this is not perfect weather by any stretch. Too dry north and too wet south. So there's a lot to be seen down there. And I think the markets are saying, all right, well, what was acreage? What's expected? Is it enough to peel back such that we make a dent in the global supply and then start to have a real spring discussion here on a rally in the Midwest United States? I don't know, but I think it's a story heading in the right direction for that.
No, and I would agree with you. That seems to be the market sentiment. The markets, it seems like more as of late have been more focused on the dryness concerns in southern Russia, Ukraine, some of the worries in the Kansas wheat belt. That's kind of been the more market focus here as of late. Any notes on anything you've been watching over in Europe and southern Russia here, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, the temperature's been pretty volatile around the Black Sea. And I've seen some of the maps that you're referencing, the dryness in southern Russia, but like it's that little spot that kind of squeezes down there where Russia's between Kazakhstan and Ukraine. You know what I mean? That little the
Mhm.
southern where it's been a bit drier. But nothing. I mean, I know we've heard about the reports, but I haven't seen any large scale issues that I think could really tip it. I think, to be honest with you, it's the Kansas issue. I mean,
Mhm.
central Kansas is having its third driest April since 1893. I mean, central Kansas, we have places there that have just received nothing. You get to eastern Kansas into Missouri, and now it's the complete opposite. I mean, you get into western Missouri, it's the ninth wettest April since 1893. So the split there is such that the dry dome that's sitting over central Kansas, and by the way, they're going to hit 90 later on this week. Okay, that dome in there just seems to not be able to be broken down, and I've got a lot of growers in there that are looking at a wheat crop that, I mean, they're about done with it. I don't think Mother
Mhm.
Nature can do much to revive it at this point. So I'm quite concerned about the central and southern plains.
Well, we'll be watching the weather, and I know, of course, folks can go to agweather.com, ag-wx.com for more information. And Eric, always appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us again this week, and have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. See you, Jesse.